This lesson is going to be about performing an IS audit. Now, auditing is a systematic approach or process that we use to objectively obtain and evaluate evidence regarding the assertions we make about a process or that were made to us about a process. Now, the goal is to form an opinion and report on how well the assertions made to us have been implemented. All right, so what does it mean, an assertion? You know, if I'm getting ready to audit and they say we have, this centralized antivirus software that's monitored by a central location and it does all these things, that's an assertion you're making to me. And I'm saying, okay, that's great. So my goal is to form an opinion and report about how well what you told me it's supposed to do, how it's doing it, and how well it's implemented, those types of things. So there are several steps, though, required for me to be successful in doing an audit. Number one, of course, adequate planning. I don't want to just walk in and say, okay, I'm here to audit your network. I think I'll start here. There has to be some sort of plan in place that I'm going to follow, a plan that's got the objectives and the scope of what I'm supposed to be doing. Part of that is I also need to be assessing risks while I'm going through this process. Now, assessing risks is knowing that everything does have a risk, and your goal is to assess to what level that risk is occurring. Now, from that information, as we're taking the plans and we know what the risks are, and if you think about it, by my looking at and assessing the risks involved in all of these processes, again, depending on the scope of what I'm supposed to be testing, I can make plans to make the audits based on the risks that you've determined are an issue that you need to look at. All right, from there I'm going to create an audit program, and that should have the objectives and procedures. What is the goal of this audit program? What am I going to do? What steps, again, procedures or steps, am I going to follow to meet the objectives I've stated in this audit program? During the process of the audit, you are going to be gathering evidence. Now remember, your goal is not to make somebody fail, right? In fact, this is not a pass-fail situation at all. We should be gathering evidence that both support the assertions or perhaps contradict the assertions made to us, but our goal is to be objective, to gather information so we can make it a better system all around. That means we evaluate the strengths and the weaknesses based on the testing. And from that, of course, we take the results, create reports that include our recommendations. Now, when we talk about performing the IS audit, there should probably be a project manager or project management for the audit. And it's up to the people in the project management to develop the detailed audit plan, to report the project activity that we've taken against the plan, in other words, to be able to keep up to date. So if I have a plan, I might, as a manager, say, where are you in this plan? What have you done? And give me the results, and so I'm plotting it out, making sure you're staying on plan and that you didn't deviate somewhere because you got bored or something like that. We also want to make sure that as we're doing the audit, if we realize that some aspects of the plan might need to change, and that will happen, right? It'd be great if I came up with the perfect plan and never had to deviate from it, but sometimes, of course, we're going to have to deviate. We might not have understood a business process or objective as well as we'd like to. Maybe we didn't understand the assertions or weren't communicated to us as well as we'd like to. And so we say, oh, okay, all right, I got that clarification. Here are some adjustments we're going to take or some corrective actions that we need to take with the plan that we've set out. When we talk about the classifications of audits, there are different types of audits that could be performed, and so we kind of generally categorize them. Of course, a financial audit would be just as it sounds. We're working with money. It could be issues of payables, of customer accounts, depending on the type of business. The operational audits would be the day-to-day work that we see in information services, the types of controls that we have that are trying to protect our assets. And an integrated audit would be trying to see how those operational audits are helping us on the financial audit front in making those types of protections and controls of both the operation as opposed to the financial parts of this. Even as I'm speaking to you, a huge news story over the weekend has come out about all of these customer accounts being stolen from a variety of different shopping outlets, mostly I think online. And that to me seems like there could be some financial issues in there, as well as operational issues. and how those two are integrated together to figure out, where the failures occurred, as far as trying to come up with a better way of making those safer through the purpose of our auditing. We can have administrative audits, which is looking at the management and how we're seeing those different types of policies and procedures being implemented. Administrative audits, we're not talking necessarily technology. It could be human resource issues, hiring issues, firing issues, all of those things. Of course, IS audits is a part of that. We might have some specialized audits. Specialized audits could be auditing a third-party contractor that is perhaps you've outsourced some of the IS processes to. It could be very highly specialized controls or processes that maybe we need to bring other types of auditors that are experts in that field to be able to perform those functions for us. We could also be performing a forensic audit, which generally is looking for irregularities or signs of criminal activity as it concerns our actual organization. And so these are some of the types of audits, remember, the classifications of some of the audits that we're doing. During your audit of an organization, you may be doing 2, 3, or all of these types of audits, depending, again, on the scope of what you were hired to do. Now, the overall audit program should be based on the scope and objectives of the assignment at hand. And it's very important that we have that outlined in our program because, again, the scope and objectives is another part of that, keeping out of trouble. If during the process of my doing an audit, I might learn of potentially a new objective. Maybe I've discovered some service, some hardware device, something that I think might be contributing to what is inside my scope and objectives, but it's not clearly outlined. That might be where we go and look to see if we can change the scope and objectives in the auditing plan. But I'm not going to freelance and go out there and test something just because I saw it. That would be going outside the objectives and could incur some criminal or even civil liability for it. So again, the scope and objectives, they are dependent on the type of audit that's being performed, and they're designed to let me know as the auditor what I'm supposed to be focusing on so I don't deviate outside and again potentially cause other issues down the road. Now your general audit procedures, right? Steps, things that we should do. Number one, of course, is gathering information of the audit area. We need to know what it is that we're going to be looking at. I don't want to suddenly discover that there's an email server out here on the network. It's one of these things that if I go back to the original plan, I need to know how that organization functions. I need to know what is there so that we can adequately create this plan. So I need to have information, the documentation of the audit area. From there, we should look at any risk assessment or perform a risk assessment. Now, risk assessments, and we see this in more detail in a different domain, is basically trying to figure out what are the vulnerabilities of the assets we're looking at, and what are the threats of and chances that those vulnerabilities can be exploited. And that's what we're looking at as risk assessment, because it's that risk assessment that can help us with understanding what types of safeguards and controls we want to use. So we want to gather that information, know the area, look at the risks, and then create an audit plan and a schedule of when that's going to occur. Now we should, as best as we can, have a detailed audit planning steps. Again, I don't want to just walk in and say, well, I'll start over here. I want to see a plan because, every process may have some subordinate processes it depends on. And so when I'm starting, I don't maybe want to look at a subordinate process first, but maybe look at it in a organized method, saying, okay, I'm going to look at this process. Maybe I'm auditing the security of your database storage. And I realize that, I'm going to look at the database. But as a part of that, I may also be interested in remote access capabilities from the network, and that's fine. But I want to have some steps, some plans that says where I should start, what I should be looking for, and move from there. You should include a preliminary view of the audit area, which I think goes hand in hand with the original prior to creating the plan, which is gathering information about the audit area. You should verify the way in which you're going to evaluate controls. Now, that's important, right? Because we want to know that we have the right types of tests that we're going to be using. When you are doing the testing, you're going to be looking at compliance and substantive testing, and we'll talk about each of those here in a bit. And of course, from the end of that, we're going to gather the information, gather the evidence we have, and that's going to be a part of our reporting and follow-up that we use in the general audit. Now, again, reporting is going to be just that, the results of our findings. We're going to have recommendations, and the follow-up, if it's a part of our charter, can be to go back in and see how well the recommendations are being implemented.